Peter. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, you know how I'm doing.
Welcome to Feature Please. A hateful voyage to the Delta Quadrant. My name's Joseph.
And I'm Peter, and unfortunately, I just watched an episode of Voyager called Season 2, Episode 4, Elogium.
Didn't do much for your mood here on this Sunday that we're recording this?
It ruined my fucking day, man. This was a... If I was at 100% fun and happiness prior to this episode, I'd say I'm like riding 20% right now.
So if you're listening to this, and I hope you are, strap yourself in, because we're going to kind of just dive into this. I think it's worth talking from my end about this and describing the process by which we watched it, because I think it conveys how painful it was. So Stevie and I sat down to watch this on Friday. Got off work, get some dinner, relax, watch Voyager so that we can be ready, because we were recording over the weekend this time, because we've been living some busy lives between the two of us. And usually when I watch these episodes, they're only 44 to 45 minutes. We bang through them pretty quick. I mean, there's some pausing so that, we talk about things that are happening. I'm taking some notes, but usually we get it done probably within an hour. I'd say it took us 2 hours to watch this episode because our frequent stops, not to talk about the episode, but simply to try and do something else. Like, even the bad episodes, like even the 37s, captured our attention enough that we watched it like straight through without serious interruption. This was so absolutely painful. We'd stop after like 15 minutes and then we'd wash the dishes, like really clean up after dinner or something.
It was a chore to watch. This was a terrible episode, and I felt like I was back in high school trying to dodge math homework, man. And that's exactly what I said. Like, were you just, gee, that bathtub really needs a good scrubbing I've been putting off. Why don't I go ahead and jump on that? The only real joy I think I took out of this was queuing up Netflix. And have you watched any of this? They got their own little documentary series they're doing now, The Toys That Made Us. You familiar with it?
I've seen it on Netflix. I hadn't heard anything about it.
It's good. I watched the first season. The He-Man and G.I. Joe episodes were real solid. The Star Wars stuff was good. It was actually, I'd say the Barbie one was the best because of the amount of vampire politics that went into that. But they just got season 2 out, and one of the full episodes they're given to Star Trek. And as a big fan of the Next Gen Playmates stuff, I'm looking forward to digging into that. And that's where my enjoyment in TV watching ended today, because from there it was right into the episode.
This episode sucked out loud. This was, I think you said it correct. It was a chore. It was a painful requirement. If I could have come up with any reason for us not to record a podcast about this, that I didn't have to finish the episode, I would have done it. But I'm too much of a completionist.
Had I watched this episode before and we were circling back around to this and I knew what we were going to get into, I would have pleaded that we just skip this goddamn thing and watch an episode of Transformers or, I don't know, Trading Spaces or America's Next Top Model and have done a podcast for this episode instead of what we just watched.
Here's a random episode of Top Chef. Here you go.
And I don't think anybody who's watched this episode out in the audience would have blamed us.
All right, let's say this right now. And this is to our detriment in terms of listenership for our podcast, but I feel like I need to warn everyone. If for whatever reason, if the warning we have given you is not if you've not watched this yet, if you're not playing the home version, if you're listening to the podcast just to hear our hot take and then sometimes going back and listening or something like that, I'm begging you not to watch this episode. Don't fucking do it. It is dangerous to sentient life.
Yeah, what you're saying, 37s, which I pooped all over its mouth. At least it was so absurd that there was still some degree of fun. This just was boring and bad and cringy.
It was the worst kind of bad. It was boring and painful to watch. It wasn't fun bad. It was
just bad.
It was bad.
It was almost emotionally abusively bad, which let's go ahead and start off right now. Neelix is emotionally abusive. Neelix is a bad person. He's a bad space cat. And he is in a very, I'm sorry, Kess is in a very unhealthy relationship with him. And had Kess not dragged me through 45 minutes of Ocampan space melodrama, baby mama drama, I would feel bad for Kess for being in this abusive relationship with Neelix. However, at this point, they are both guilty parties. Kess is no longer a good character to me because she just put me through this. Fuck both of these characters.
Jennifer Lean certainly put in like maximum effort on playing,
I don't blame Jennifer Lean. I blame the
Heat.
character of Kess. Ugh. Okay, so let's start off. So the doors to Turbolift open up, and Chakotay, whose only juicy moments in life are lived in thresholds,
right?
Is about, yeah, and I guess if we're going to jump back to the great episode we just had last episode, that was the threshold between life and death where he intercepted the doctor. And that's really what this all boils down to. Projections was such a great episode that Voyager could not let it stand, and that is why they are punishing us. We're paying in blood for how good Projections was right now. You might have thought the cost of Projections was the 37s. No, it's Elogium. So the doors to this Turbolift open up. There's two gold suitors in there making out.
Those extras were going at it.
Yeah,
they were committed to that stage kiss.
The guy looks like Malibu Ken. And he pulls off and tries to, explain some shit, and then Chakotay waves him off. Eventually, Kess and Tom Paris show up with 2 arms full of cabbage. And it brings up this conversation about fraternization on the ship. And they get up to the mess hall. They dump off this cabbage. And immediately that abusive space cat, Neelix, starts giving Kess a hard time about the way that Tom Paris is looking at her, and it's his standard "I'm a jealous space cat" bullshit.
I mean, Tom is definitely horning in on her, but Tom horns in on, everything. Literally, like, you could have poop on your head, and we know Tom Paris will want to fuck you. So,
you think Tom's like intentionally going after this space child because before he was kind of playful, but since Neelix stepped on his dick during the Kazon diplomacy situation a couple episodes back, like now he's like, I'm going to teach Neelix what happens. You want to cramp my style? I'm about to cramp your style.
All I know is that Tom's a voyeur because he disappointed he didn't catch people making out in the turbo lift, and he wants to nail that.
Voyeur's like putting on public, which I guess we could say he is a voyeur. Judging by the fact he has dragged all of his friends into his JO dungeon.
It's true.
I think he was disappointed about the makeout session specifically just because he's a perv. But
like you said, Neelix, Snarf's like the worst boyfriend ever. He's abusive and incredibly jealous, and he's a complete tool. And he's just the fucking worst. He's the worst through 90% of this episode. The scene wraps with him basically telling Kess to go fuck off because she has the temerity to be, attractive to Tom Paris. It's just awful.
The only part of this scene that I really got anything entertainment value out was more unsafe food handling. These guys are just getting into the food that they're making for the crew. Not a drop of water on those hands in sight. And I believe at one point, Neelix even eats some of the cabbage and then spits it back into the pot they're cooking.
There's a bug on it, and Neelix is like, I wonder if the captain would think if there's a bug on her on her salad. Like, dude, you're a filthy space cat. You're handling unsafe products on the regular. Products so unsafe they poison the ship and nearly kill everyone. And you think that the captain's going to freak out because there's a little beetle in her shit? Oh, come the fuck on. That aggressive space salmonella you gave her 2 weeks ago is probably far worse.
Yeah, I think he's just being a petulant little bitch because, again, he's got the jealous thing going there. We've got 2 storylines that are going to develop here. One is Kess's problems, and then the other is yet another needless space dilemma that Voyager willingly flew into. I think there's a lot of recaps. Not recap. They discuss the same points over and over between multiple people throughout this. I think we could probably recap this entire episode in 4 sentences. And the fact they were able to drag an entire episode out of it is a big part of why it was a bad episode. So on the bridge, in typical Starfleet fashion, they discover something weird and decide to go fly into it.
There's an interesting piece of dialogue, like one of the few things that I took note of when they did it. So before they run into their stupid space issue of the day, Janeway and Chakotay have a little talk about Chakotay finding the 2 gold shirts, making out in the turbo lift. And Janeway points out that Starfleet has no rules about fucking. None. Apparently, you can fuck whoever you want in Starfleet. It's not like the actual military where there's a lot of hard and fast rules about relationships and sexual encounters and all that. Like, apparently Starfleet's very hands-off when it comes to if you want to get down with your coworkers.
Were you under impression that that was not the case?
I never heard it explicitly expressed in Star Trek.
But I mean, I thought it was pretty clear that like Riker has put his D in, 90% of the Enterprise's crew. That wouldn't have been possible if there were franchisation issues, would there? I mean, Geordi trying to date his subordinates all over the place.
I've never heard, like, Starfleet has no regulations about that expressly said, A. And B, I think the most compelling episode I've ever seen about, like, the dangers of workplace romance in Star Trek was when the captain got a girlfriend. The commander... Oh, gosh. Oh, I forget her name. She was played by a real Mrs. Robinson-looking woman. She was like a science officer in stellar cartography or something. Do you remember that?
This is a Next Gen episode?
Yeah.
What
it was a later
to her?
Next Gen episode. It's actually worth a rewatch. Unlike this episode, like if you have still not watched Elogium yet, stop and find the episode where the captain gets a girlfriend in TNG. Watch that instead.
I would say if there's a great reason not to date a coworker, it would have been when Chakotay was dating a fucking Cardassian spy who would go on to sabotage the ship and then run off with Federation technology. Maybe that's why Chakotay wants to throw up the force fields of cock blocking, is because he's butthurt that he got played like a fool.
So they find space fish.
In space vape. They say space vapor.
And I find they basically look like space fish in this weird, like, magnetic space vapor. They want to take a look because they're Starfleet and they can't help but stick their fucking nose in everything they fucking find, even if it has no bearing on their ability to get home.
I want to pose a question to you here before we jump into Ensign Wildman, who, in case all of the red lights flashing over your head, you didn't notice is going to be a big deal.
Oh yeah, this is where she shows up.
Yeah, just in case you didn't know, this was going to be a person to remember. Not only does she get a name, but like some pretty fair amount of dialogue. All right, so several times now, I mean, we've got Candy Corn Tragedy. There was the Space Baby episode 1. This thing. Mm-hmm. 37. A lot of times Voyager's going along. Everything is fine. Voyager catches something on long-range sensors and decides to go the opposite direction away from Earth. How many times can the writers really pull this off until they hit a point where Voyager is going to find something that the results of whatever they're scientific... Oh, the goddamn space spider asteroid. Another, hey, let's go here and explore and get ourselves into some significant problems. What point is it going to pay off? And they're going to be like, hey, you know what? This dumb field trip we just took paid off pretty well. Not only do we have more energy out of the deal, but now we're moving a little faster, or our genuine quality of life has been improved.
Yeah, like when are they finally going to give these guys a win out of this?
And I don't need them to hit like, oh, hey, here's a brand new space rock that lets us hit like warp 15. I just need like, you know what? That paid off good. Our uniforms are now 20% more resistant to tearing, or here has been something positive that has happened as a result of our curiosity that justifies the next 10 times we fall into a fucking trap and suffer.
I mean, this is the overall problem when you talk about Star Trek writing, though, is that the tropes they fell into as a kind of on an institutional basis. And this show is just the absolute worst about it is the ship in a bottle. Like you have to have a self-contained problem. And so every time they encounter a new thing, that's got to be the problem, right? So they're not thinking of that. They're not thinking about we're painting this picture that every time these guys hang their ass over the edge, that gets bit, so probably going to stop at some point. They don't offer that justification because they're not thinking of it at all. They just don't consider it necessary.
It's disappointing, and I mean I can eat these stupid episode premises if every now and then they catch a break and something good comes out of the deal instead of, wow, we barely made it out of that one.
I would like to engage with you on a potential way forward through the rest of this episode, because I'm looking at my notes and I'm dreading having to hash out every single detail in this. Would you be okay with me sort of just summarizing things so that we can talk about anything more interesting, like anything?
Do you think do you want to live up to my challenge and see if you can outline this entire thing in 4 sentences?
Okay, yes. I think that's an excellent challenge. I'm going to give it the first try. You ready?
Okay. All right.
Kes goes into space heat
because of the fish.
Let me give it a try here, buddy. Let me give it a try. All right.
The more complete you are, the less we have to talk about this. I'm biting my nails. I'm rooting for your heart here, man. I'll quit cheating.
Okay.
All
right. Kes goes into space heat. The fish are all fucking and want to fuck the ship. Snarf and Kes don't end up having a baby. Samantha Wildman is pregnant. That's it. That's 4 sentences. I think I covered it all.
That was more interesting this episode, actually. That's a good job. Move over, Bran. Oh, there's a new Voyager writer in town.
So, this episode was so bad, I looked into it. First of all, obvious to me, I'm sure it was obvious to you, this is a season 1 holdover. Not only did they end up using the crappy old-style tricorder.
They're not crappy tricorders, they're just old. Those tricorders got a place in my heart.
Samantha Wildman being pregnant, which is revealed at the very end. Remember, they're in space for 6 months, so it seems very weird that she wouldn't know she's pregnant, especially since they later explain that her husband is this race that matures very quickly, a Kataran, and so she probably would have known a lot before then. So clearly this was supposed to happen at some point in the first season, relatively early on. And then too, this was peak 90s TV in the sense that almost all the dialogue is this long form meditation on if you should or shouldn't have kids, and are you ready for fatherhood or motherhood, depending on who's having the conversation. Because really the central drama is if Snarf and Child Bride are going to make a half space cat, half mayfly elf baby, which just sounds terrifying. It's not it's not Star Trek. This belonged on fucking Dawson's Creek. This is the dialogue that belongs on a soapy 90s TV show.
Let's push it back even further than that if we're going to talk about where this belonged. The most shocking thing in this episode to me is that Neelix and Kes, who come on board as a couple, have separate quarters. So you've got so many open rooms around the ship that you're giving not stowaways, but a mayfly and a space cat separate quarters when I'm pretty sure the lower decks are hot bunking. That's very generous. And I would be super pissed off if I was enlisted Starfleet and I'm in there sharing a bed with some Maquis scumbag terrorist you guys fished out of the trash. Meanwhile, Space Cat has his own room and his child girlfriend is eating all of the food on the ship. Where's she pulling all these mashed? So part of her, it's her puberty episode really, is that she just starts eating weird stuff. She's eating bugs. She's eating 4 bowls of mashed potatoes with dirt mixed in. They run in the, I can't let the replicator stuff go.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Okay. Privileges.
I mean, obviously they do. Imagine everyone on the ship has replicator privileges. And she's kicking in. She's a nurse. She's doing the hydroponics. She's got jobs. It's not like she's freeloading. She's more useful than fucking Neelix, who's all he's
Yeah.
done is poison the ship and feed people chili they don't want.
Yeah.
Like,
so as she's eating weird stuff and getting inexplicably sick, all I can think in my head is like, she is a space dog and she is just eating space grass to try and throw up whatever space sickness she has. But after she effectively force fields her way into the doctor's own office, like, how is this civilian pulling in security systems that the fucking doctor can't override?
Among a million mistakes in this episode, I mean, it had me pining for the days we were like reflected on the fact that Neelix wasn't in episodes. I was like halfway through. That was an actual note I wrote down. I was like, God damn, remember when this guy wasn't in actual episodes? Wasn't that great? I spent time to write that down. And like during one of the many breaks we took so that I could like wash my fucking hair before I had to go back and finish this garbage. It's trying to be heavy, but instead it's boring. It tries to like go deep on this like societal question like Star Trek sometimes does, but instead comes off as preachy and stupid and heavy-handed. And honestly, going through the notes, the only interesting character point that happened at all was that we find out Tuvok had 4 kids. And
he's talked about that before.
He's talked about he had a family, but this is the first time he's gotten into depth. Like, I had 4 kids, 3 sons, 1 daughter. And he talks about his kids in a very Vulcan way that I could buy, like the way that he would act, that he would process his appreciation for his family. Like, that's it. And that exchange is the only part of this episode that like had my attention. Everything else, I was playing with my phone. I was asking my wife how her day was.
I was doing Google searches trying to find out if there's a way to fast forward in Netflix the way that there is in YouTube so I could just watch this thing faster. Again, this is a season 1 episode and it should, I guess, kind of be viewed in that respect, but it just seemed mind-boggling to me that they've been out in space for 6 months and this is the first time that Chakotay and Janeway are going to sit down and have a real conversation about what's it going to take to get home and do they need to start breeding replacement crew members? That should have been like week 2 conversation.
Funny you bring that up. The complaint of the producers was this one got held back, and it was really weird that it got held back because of the timing of those conversations. So this angered me so much. I went and looked into like the production of it and the writing of it. First of all, with some for hire guys who wrote this.
Yeah.
The only part about the writing of it that seemed interesting was that Samantha Wildman was named after a person
an organ donor
of the writer who saved his wife's life. So that's nice. But the production notes on it being held back were basically they actually tried to correct the continuity of it 5 years later. Like there's a line of dialogue in a 7th season episode to try and explain why it is Samantha Wildman didn't know she was pregnant for 6 months.
Do they also correct what happens to caretaker syphilis? Because that's what I'm more interested in.
Oh, come on. They called that one out for you last week.
Yeah, but they didn't say they actually fixed it.
I think we have to give him that one back. Like, that was a funny joke.
The conversation about the children. All right, so let's say this did get kicked back into season 1. Would this have aired before or after the 37s, you think? Because I say that this one ties, let's call need to reproduce. If your A story is Voyager decided to fly into another space organism and get itself stuck and can't just shoot its way out because Janeway's a big pussy. If that's your A story, your B story is Kes wants to have a baby. The C story is going to be the child dilemma. And I think that would tie in strongly with the 37s because now you have this opportunity to bring new genetic material on the ship and, people who want to have a life that includes children and not living the remainder of your life and potentially dying of old age on a starship. A real good chance for interplay, and I think maybe puts some more gravity into the conundrum which they botched in exploring in 37s as to, do you stop with good enough or do you really try and go all the way home?
Right. The version of the 37s we wish they had done versus the one they actually did. But to your point, according to the production notes, the producers wanted to end season 1 on this, which that talk about dodging a bullet, and I can't believe I'm saying that in reference to the learning curve somehow being better, but it clearly is. Space friendship might be magic, but it's definitely better than this. As far as like the overall conversation, I imagine like if you were to try and do this the right way, that would be a difficult thing to have up front when you're kind of pinning your hopes on finding a shortcut home. Like that feels like a conversation that might not actually come up until a little later on as people settle into the reality. But for that first 6 months, I'd be like, okay, maybe we'll find a wormhole, maybe we'll find this other caretaker or whatever, and we'll get back home, right? Because they probably have reason to believe that they won't necessarily be out there for long. And therefore, a conversation about, do we have to have rules about, fucking? Do we have to have rules about having kids? Do we have to make sure we've got kids because we've got to train a new generation of crew? That might not happen until you've done this for a year and you're starting to realize, maybe we got to do this the long way.
Bullshit. When you got Tom Paris on your crew and this guy is chomping at the bit to drag his dick through anything that moves, and all the slut shaming on the Delaney sisters, and I mean, crew fraternization, I would say, is up front for at least a third of the episodes that we've watched so far. Yeah, I think they should have had this conversation earlier, and I think it should have been explored more in the 37s if you were to try and pull the 37s out of the trash.
This episode in the 37s would have been incredibly well served by focusing on these questions in a way that's relevant to the story. But come on, man, you can't make Tom Paris's thirsty ass like your pilot fish for if you're going to have this conversation or not. That man fucks. And he fucks anything he can. So if anything, that's like not a good sign that we need to treat this seriously.
I want to point out that while Chakotay and Janeway are having the in-depth discussion on this, Chakotay's eating soup.
Yeah.
The soup fetish rears its head again.
They take a break in the middle of their space conundrum, getting all fucked with by space fish, to have a little like lunch confab talking about if they needed to raise like children to run the ship. Whatever. I mean, every this episode checked every box of just bad. The performances were bad. The characters they focused on were the worst.
What'd you think of Kessa's snot hands? Part of her, I don't know, the fuck is it? Her puberty thing is that her hands start oozing snot.
Yeah, so they could be bound for 6 days. I think
preposterous. Yeah. 6 days. Their mating cycle is what, a 16th of her entire lifespan?
Yeah, it's a serious commitment when you only live to be like, what, 10 or whatever.
Is it 10 or 6?
No, I think in the episode, Kess says they usually don't have this go down until they're 6. So, but I think their lifespan, I forget, 10 or 12. I'm so dispirited, I'm not even going to bother to look it up.
Another good background line that got tossed in was that the Voyager Maquis Sting mission was only supposed to be 3 weeks.
Yeah, and that cottons to what we understood about what they were equipped to do. They've said in the past, well, hey, we don't have a counselor because it was supposed to be a short duration mission. We weren't equipped to be out in deep space. We were equipped on a bounty hunt. Regardless if that was a good idea or not, given the configuration of the ship, that was clearly what they were asked to go do. Whatever. So we are really grasping at straws. We're trying to find just the barest threads of interesting shit that happened in this 44.
The Neelix Kess drama. Kess is like, we get one shot at having a baby. I want to have a baby. Neelix gives a little bit of pushback, like, I didn't think I was going to be a dad this morning. And you're kind of hit me with this fast. And his hesitation makes her push harder about like, no, I want a baby. Are you in or out? And then finally, once, Neelix comes back and says, yes, she's made the decision that, hey, by the way, I don't want to have a baby after all. And he gets a little butthurt about it. But there's this concern at first, like, oh, you've missed your window to conceive. Now we're never going to have a child. And that's, making me sad. And she says, well, the doctor says he thinks that space vape out there might have just been a false flag. And I might have my legitimate shot here down the road. And Neelix gets all excited, but really, let's try to give this a shred of, I don't know, actual discussion here. You're talking about having a baby with a woman who is for sure going to be dead within 8 years. So you're condemning yourself to a life of single parenting for a child that might have a lifespan of maybe 20 years. You're talking about surviving both your wife and your kid here. That's a pretty depressing path to go down.
Believe it or not, probably one of the best episodes on the show explores that very question. If I can brighten your day at all, it is that down the road, there is an episode that specifically explores this very question as it relates to Kess and family and, you know, the outpacing, outliving, quote unquote. So they do go down these roads later, and they do so more effectively when it comes to Kess and her lifespan and what that means to the people around her.
Well, to brighten the day for Neelix, I mean, his worst case scenario, if that was her one chance to conceive and it didn't happen, well, just wait 6 years, dude, and you're going to be single again. So plenty of childbearing opportunities, you know. So it's a big pond out there.
Hey, to till death do us part means something very different for him.
Yeah. The only other really thing I have to talk about in this episode is the resolution for the A plot, which is Voyager has been sucked into a school of magic space fish that eat through pores in their outer skin. They eat space dust, and really it's a big mating pond, and there's like a big space whale floating around that's just slamming itself into Voyager repeatedly. The failure of leadership here is so astounding. You've endangered Voyager. The first time when she flew into like Space Baby Cloud, going after
a purpose, right? Yeah, it was for to boost the ship.
Yeah, and they lost a bunch of energy or whatever. But they flew in. They didn't mean to get as close. They got sucked in. I thought Torres was nothing but real talk the whole episode. She's like, look, for all we know, we just got pulled into a trap, and these things are leeching our energy, and this big one's just like openly assaulting us. If the hand phasers have like a range of settings, couldn't the Voyager just like stun the big one away and then flew off instead of playing this game, which culminates in, I don't know. I get that there's a lot of testosterone from time to time in Star Trek, and maybe they're trying to make a point to be as unkirk as possible about this. But when Chakotay finally comes up with a solution to the dilemma, is like, instead of just shoving our way out of here, like, what if we literally just roll over on our belly and like piss ourselves and limp away? And Janeway's like, yeah, let's try that, and it works. And Chakotay basically reveals himself to be like the king of submissives.
I mean, oh god, this episode was very. I can't put this any other way. This episode was very female. I'm not sure if it was trying to appeal to the other, this mysterious other demographic that they think is watching Star Trek. Of people who watch Lifetime movies. I don't know how else to put this. It was very much an episode.
A Hallmark Network
Hallmark Network special, like, this is what this was, and it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, I'm not saying women don't watch Star Trek, they obviously do, and I don't mind them taking a softer edge. In fact, it's kind of a welcome change of pace on occasion. But this was just incompatible. The people who would like this aren't watching this show. I see your point that, like, the way it ended there with Chakotay was kind of emblematic of the whole thing. That's all I really wanted to say. Go ahead.
I can see why Ronald Moore walked out of this writer's room.
Yeah, I can too. Coming off at DS9 and then like walking into the 4th or 5th season of this with this kind of thing on the ground, like, ugh. Shifting away from the episode, because I'm done talking about it. It's fucking garbage. If you've listened to this podcast up to this point, and
I apologize that you've had to share our pain with us.
Skip this episode of Voyager. Do not rewatch it. I would say it's worth rewatching time and again in the 37s, only because they are so bad, and it is interesting to dissect them about how bad they are. This is the first one I say, just do not do this to yourself. Just don't watch this. It fucking sucks. Just realize there's this blue shirt named Samantha Wildman who's pregnant. That's all you gotta fucking know. I got an email from one of our fans, Jack. You've seen Jack on the Facebook group, right?
Yeah.
Well, Jack let me know some critical information about your second favorite topic on the show. You're a friend of mine.
Replicators?
No, Cardassian Hallway.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do tell.
He did some research for us. He linked me a piece of a YouTube video that informed me that we have been wrong to call it Cardassian Hallway the whole time. It's actually a reuse of a hallway from Star Trek V.
No.
This is a reuse of the Enterprise A set from Star Trek V. So this is not a Cardassian hallway. This is a TOS movie hallway.
I don't believe that.
Dude, I'm going to link it to the Facebook page.
You're telling me that they tore down every Enterprise bridge like the day after the final filming shoot, and somehow a portion of Star Trek V extra background Enterprise set has survived how many years for this?
Well, it would have
20 plus?
It would have. Star Trek V, I think, was made in 1990. I want to say. So it would have only been 5 years, and they reused those movie sets on TNG several times. I want to say they also used them on DS9, so it does not shock me that they would be reusing hallway sets on Voyager. Not at all. Paramount is using all parts of the Buffalo, all the Star Trek Buffalo. But yeah, that's not a Cardassian hallway. That is a TOS movie hallway. Is your mind blown? Have I blown your mind?
Yeah, and I have to say I miss it even more now.
Yeah, Dr. Jack, thank you so much for letting us know that. I held on to that. I didn't tell Peter just so we could get this fresh and raw reaction for everybody. So
I'll be
spot on. Yeah.
Any other good email out there from the fans?
Well, while we've been recording, actually, Chris, one of the folks that we've kind of picked up as part of our adventure into to Voyager, someone we don't know, just somebody who's become a fan. He posted to the group and he said the following: "I just want it to be known that mornings where I get up and see new episode V'ger Please on my phone are my favorite kind of mornings. The commute to work is going to be a good one. Smiley face emoji. Chris, I'm fucking sorry that this is going to happen to you on Thursday. You're gonna be excited. You're gonna see that fucking notification on your phone, and you're gonna come bounding out like, yeah, I'm gonna have an hour's entertainment on the way to work. And you're gonna fire this one up to two really angry, grouchy mid-30s nerds, bummed out, telling you not to watch this episode. Not being able to get even 30 minutes of content out of it. I feel bad we're letting you down, man. And I would direct your anger towards the producers and let them know that 25 years ago they made some fucking terrible choices. That's it though, man. Like, I guess I'll throw out a thank you. I think some people were sharing the podcast. We saw some new people take on downloading the whole back catalog the last couple weeks. So appreciate, as always, people throwing out the love and links and letting people know about us. And
absolutely. And we haven't talked about it in a while, but we do have a Facebook. We got two Facebook things out there. We got our main page where we try and keep things, I don't know, official like. And then there's the V'ger Please Trauma Support group where it's a lot of community interaction and, listener on listener heavy meme rotation. So check that out. Some kindred spirits out there. Big thank you again to anybody who has spread our name around the internet and brought other people into listening to this. Go ahead and let them know if you're getting people to catch up on the back catalog that this is the episode to skip. And if they're hard up in a pinch, Don't make season 2, episode 4 of V'ger Please their introduction to the series. Otherwise, they might just come out and want to shoot themselves in the head as bad as I do after having had to talk about this.
I mean, it's more painful for us. Like, oh, I imagine at least listening to us be angry and suffer is marginally more entertaining than having to have watched this episode and then try and think of what you're going to say about it.
What was our prediction for this episode for the worst people to focus on?
Harry Kim was our joint guest. It was Harry Kim, and he's barely in it. I didn't have any memory of this, and I did not consider like a Kess snarf like goddamn Lifetime movie as what would happen.
Kim was too smart, man. He knew to duck this one out. Coming up from here, we got season 2, episode 5, non sequitur.
Sequitur. Yeah.
Harry Kim wakes up in San Francisco, having never been assigned to Voyager, which Starfleet considers lost. Joe, what do you remember about this?
I remember it very well. I remember it very well indeed.
Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down, huh? I don't know if I can do 2 of these back to back, Joe. This is killing me.
Dude, I will say this unqualified from what I remember, and I remember this episode relatively well. It's definitely better than Elogium. Like
nothing.
Not a high bar. Not a high bar.
You're saying not a high bar. I mean, I would give my left nut right now for more of Carr and Batman 89 Bob Kazan character. I think this is going to be the new hood ornament on the Terra Badmobile that is Voyager. This is easily the worst I think we've watched.
That's no doubter. No doubter. Even the most miserable I was watching Time and Again. And that was infinitely more entertaining than this because of baffling production decisions and Janeway getting clocked in the face and them shooting it cheap as shit at that goddamn water treatment plant. And like everything that was going on in that episode, the fact that it ended on a wet fart, like everything about that episode was so bafflingly stupid. It was entertaining for that. And that was the worst prior.
It gave you something to yell at the TV about. This one was just like, man, is there a fast forward button on Netflix? What the fuck? It took
2 fucking hours for us to watch this because we would rather have done anything else, and that's all the best I can say about it.
Well, then I'll look forward to this next episode. Although it's a little disappointing to hear that they're swinging low on this one too. Let's wrap this bad boy up. Given the fact that Kess ultimately decides that she does not want to go forward with the childbirth and would rather instead to focus on her own personal development, I'm going to give you the Ferengi rule of acquisition number 6. Never allow family to stand in the way of opportunity.
I feel like you shouldn't have wasted one. I feel like you should have just said...
I feel like I shouldn't have wasted 45 minutes of my life watching this goddamn thing. But
at least I didn't make you do it on your birthday, bro.
I'd have killed you.
All right, on that note.
I've already wished. I'm a witch, and I'm able to hex very well if that surgery on your neck taught you nothing.
All right. Well, if I suddenly feel like another tumor growing, I'm going to know it's fucking you.
No, you're going to know that it was Elogium rearing its head. You're going to wake up tomorrow, and you're going to have sticky, gooey, yellow substance over your hands, and it's not going to be spooge. It's going to be some more Voyager cancer.
Oh, my name is Joseph.
I'm Peter.
Thank you for watching V'ger Please, 2 defeated and upset nerds who watch the worst episode of science fiction of all time. We'll see you next week.